This week on the Digital Marketing Scoop, we're talking with Fergus Ryan about using biology to create powerful content. Fergus, thanks very much for joining us on the podcast today.
No problem. Thanks a million for having me, Mark and Jan. Lovely to be here with you.
Very welcome, very welcome. So, would you tell us a bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, so I would have started in a more traditional marketing background with an insurance company. It was actually the fund management arm of an insurance company. So I was doing a lot of traditional marketing, press releases, mail shots, and turning up all around the country presenting. And I suppose my transfer into digital, I was trying to basically get out of the car and not have to drive all over the country. So we started doing more focused email marketing and webinars. Now, webinars mightn't sound like a big deal today because everyone's doing them, but this was like 2009, 2010, before webinars are what they are now. So that kind of piqued my interest in digital. And in 2014, I got the chance to leave Aviva and jump into digital full time. So I took it, I grasped it with both hands. I freelanced for a couple of years and then I joined Wolfgang Digital. And more recently now I'm going to join the Travelport Digital content team. I also briefly flirted with sports media. I was covering mixed martial arts for places like Air Sport, 98FM and Independent.ie, but no longer doing that. It's just digital now.
Cool. Very good.
Fantastic.
Now, you're in a very specific niche, I would say, of digital. That you're, in terms of the content creation side, you focus a lot on, how human biology and I suppose human psychology affect content creation. So could you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I suppose the genesis for this, if you like, was the Simon Sinek TED Talk. And where he was talking about stuff, how emotion was required to make a connection. And if you started with the why rather than the what or the how, if you start with the why, you're more likely to build a connection. That kind of, I remember when I watched that first, I thought, this is just the usual marketing mumbo jumbo. But having thought about it, read a little bit around the subject, read his book, obviously watched his TED Talk numerous times, just started to think about it, going, there has to be more to it than just the words. If you ever do any kind of research on, okay, so what is good content or how do we get more people to our website? Google will say things to you like, well, if you make great content that your audience loves, that's how you get people to your website. So that's fine. But what is great content and how do we know the audience loves it? The best example I could give is the guilty pleasure, right? So we all have the type of music that we like, but we all have guilty pleasures in music that isn't isn't typical to the other stuff we like, but we just really dig this tune. I would be very much guitar based, guitar solo, Rage Against the Machine, Pearl Jam, all that good stuff. But I do love Crowded House and Neil Finn, and I have not missed a Neil Finn gig in Ireland in about 20 years. But those two genres of music are at very opposing ends of the spectrum. So how do you cater for that? How do you create content that you know or hope that your audience is going to love? And if you just think about from a words, like if you just do your SEO keyword research, you're falling into the trap of just creating content for robots. Yes, you're going to maybe rank well for a period because you're ticking all the boxes SEO wise. But then if people jump in and bounce straight out of the content or don't read it, you're eventually going to fall down the ranks. So now you're back to square one. Where do I get this content that my readers are going to love? So it's basically, it could be summed up as just focusing on the message rather than the medium. Simon Sinek was the genesis for it. And I just found it a fascinating topic just to understand, why do people like what they like?
So is it in terms of in the content you create, you want to try and create that emotional connection with the user, that it's not just laying out the information, it's actually connecting with them, that they're going to have more of a connection with the content, basically?
Yeah, so if you just look at it from the words point of view, you can have the most comprehensive technical spec, or you can have, all the list of features of the product and the latest technology. But if people don't understand how that impacts their life, they mightn't make the connection that, that's really cool, that's why I need that. It's like one of the best examples, and I think Simon Sinek might use it. If you go back to the marketing of the iPod in the mid 2000s, so it's a device, it's tiny, and it has I think they had 1 gig of memory at the time, and that was cool because nothing this small ever had 1 gig of memory. But like to the ordinary guy walking down the street, what's a gig of memory? Like, what does that do for me? So if you say to people, look at the size of this thing, you could fit it in your pocket, you can go running with it, it won't skip, and it's going to save 1,000 songs on this little small thing. Now you've got a connection. Now you think, oh, hold on a sec, I've got 250 CDs, so that's like maybe 2,000 songs. So I can put loads of these onto my iPod and go jogging, go to the gym, have them on the commute. And now we've got a connection. So the words and the technical spec and the accuracy of the words and their relevance to maybe search volume or ranking and that kind of cool stuff for digital marketing, that's one aspect of it. But if the person reading it or consuming the content doesn't understand the benefit or they make a connection with this content, it's maybe not going to be much use. This isn't a new phenomenon. So there was a guy called Theodore Levitt who wrote On Marketing, I think in the 1960s. And he basically knew at that point, 60 odd years ago, that people don't buy a 1/4-inch drill bit. They're buying a 1/4-inch hole. Like the tungsten and the grooves and the swirl on the drill bit, that's all great. But that's not what I'm buying it for. I'm buying it for it's going to make a 1/4-inch hole, and now I can hang my picture or my flat screen TV or whatever it is you want to do. You're not buying the tungsten and the engineering in the drill. You're buying the thing that does, which is the hole, which is going to make your room much better or your life much better, and that's the whole point. So it's trying to find the thing that gets the reader going, and that might be, or that is more than just the words. It's not just the words you need, it's the emotion you're trying to evoke out of the people from the words.
Yeah.
So you kind of, I suppose it's in that case it's almost like sell the benefits and the results as opposed to the features in the iPod example that you gave there.
Yeah, exactly. Because so if you go real complex into, say, a B2B heavy industrial type company, so they're selling really complicated machinery perhaps that takes, could have a sales cycle of maybe 2 years. It's a significant investment of money. So the information you're going to give, you can give all the technical spec, but is that going to get the guy up out of his seat to pick up the phone to place the order, to go to the CFO's office to place the order? You need to be able to tell them why your machine is such a much better fit for their business. Maybe you need to tell them about the technology and how it's developed, but you have to make some kind of connection that this guy can't do without this, because it's going to do this for his life and his customer's life, and therefore this is the thing he needed. There's a great English marketer called Rory Sutherland who works for Ogilvy. And I don't know if it's his line, but he frequently uses the line, no one gets fired for buying IBM. And what that basically, I think, he's basically saying there is it's not a risk to buy IBM. If something goes wrong, you can blame IBM, and it doesn't happen that often. IBM are so reliable. If you buy the smaller niche thing and it goes wrong, well, then you might have a problem. So if you're not IBM, you have to come up with really cool ways to market your product. Because if you're just going head to head with technical specs, you may be the same, but because you're not IBM, you're going to lose. So if you can go beyond the technical spec and talk about how this product is going to do this for your customers and their lives are going to be so much better, and it's going to free up so much more time to do the other things that they really want to do. If you get into that aspect of it, in some ways it might be like talking about the product without talking about the product. But just listing off the technical spec, chances are, unless you're IBM, it's just not going to be good enough. You need to go deeper than that and really speak to the people who are buying the products.
Yeah, it's definitely that kind of concept of selling the problem, not the product, really. And Apple have been so good at doing that for years. I mean, I remember the same thing with the iPods, Joe. I think the tagline at the time was 1,000 songs in your pocket.
Yeah.
And that was that connection was the Apple do it. They always do it really good. I mean, just one look at their website and you want everything.
Yeah, you see they come out with the new one which has the new camera. You don't really hear about the megapixels or the aperture. You actually just see what people created with it, and that's what creates that connection, that emotional connection, I guess.
Yeah, Apple is such a great case. I try not to use Apple all the time, but it's hard because they're just so good at it. And if you like, I've gone into, so I have an iPhone, an iPad, Apple TV, iPods. Most of my tech is Apple, except for laptops, because I really struggle to see how they can be 3 times more expensive than a normal. So, for example, the thing I have here is a Lenovo, and I spent €1,000, which is a lot for a laptop. But I went into a couple of shops and I talked to the Apple guys and I said, give me one good reason why an Apple laptop is better than an ordinary Windows laptop. And honestly, the only thing people would say to me is, "Oh, they're just cool. They're just cool." And then I went into where I ultimately bought this laptop. I went into the guy and I said, "I'm really having an arm wrestle about whether to buy a Mac or just a Windows, because I'd always been Windows on laptops up to this. But I was thinking, well, everything else is Apple, so I might as well just get an Apple Mac." But it was like 3 times the price. And the guy in the shop said, "Look, I'll sell you an Apple if you want, or you give me €1,000 and I will build you a laptop better than the Apple." And I said, really, like, genuinely to be better. And he went in, then he started to get into the technical spec and said, "Look, this is going to be better. Like, I have an Intel Core i7. I don't know what that is, but this is better than the one in the Apple, apparently." And he just went down through this is going to be better. This will be faster. This will be better. And he goes, I'm honest to God, he goes, "You keep €2,000, give me €1,000, and I'll give you a better machine." And that was kind of if you like, the content that sold it to me, the emotional bit that sold it to me. If you look at Apple, the iOS operating system is about 20% of the world's machines. So laptops, tablets, phones. 20% of those machines run on iOS. So 80%, they're not the smallest part of the market, but they are a fraction of the market. They're 1/5 of the operating systems or devices around. Yet they are so much more profitable than Samsung, who are Android, who sell more phones. If you ask people, well, what's the best mobile phone? It's typically maybe a Samsung or a Huawei. iPhones are cool, but they're not the best phone. But yet they sell billions of them out the door. Like, they are the most profitable. And it's down to what you were saying, Jen. They just have the marketing side of it nailed.
Yeah, I'm totally sucked into the ecosystem. I can't even lie about it. I recently was thinking about switching to Android, and I just can't, because I'll have to get a new laptop. I'll have to completely export my life. I just can't. I can't even the headache of it. And then I just know that Apple will bring out something pretty, and I'll be jealous of that again. So why would I switch over?
Yeah. There's no Dropbox solution big enough to handle the changeover that you'd need to do to go from Apple to Android. Yeah,
absolutely not.
Yeah.
So Fergus, if somebody's listening to this and they're thinking, okay, how do I get into the mindset maybe of, okay, I'm writing blog posts, let's say, at the moment. I want to try and get in the mindset of how to write these in such a way that, you know, we hear it all the time, and you mentioned that earlier, you know, essentially people kind of writing for Google, writing for the robots. Do you have any kind of tips or any way if people can try and get into the mindset of writing for their customer in such a way that they're going to connect with the content?
Yeah. So that's a brilliant question, Mark. And just to take a step back from that to kind of build up to that, I think, and this is what led to me reading a lot of books around this subject, is to basically understand at what level of the brain or where we're trying to appeal to people. So without getting too technical now, I'm very much an amateur biologist or psychologist. Like, I don't have the academic qualifications to back this stuff up. This is all coming from the books I've read. So I'm not pretending this is original research or anything. But there's basically 3 levels of our brain. There's our original lizard brain, if you like, which is basically where all our habits live. So you can, without any conscious decision, you can get along fine with just your lizard brain and the basal ganglia. Like, Alzheimer patients have been able to live reasonably, I won't say normal lives, but function, because habits have been created in this area of their brain that allows them to go out for a walk around their block without getting into trouble or getting lost. Because they do it so often, it becomes muscle memory, and that's your lizard brain. Then above that then is your monkey brain. So as we evolved into apes then, our monkey brain, our limbic brain started to take over. And this is very much the emotional epicenter of us. It's where fight or flight lives. So when you're in a tense situation, you decide, well, I'm going for it or I'm getting out of here. That's all happens in your limbic brain. The key thing about this limbic brain is it can't process language. This is before we started talking to each other in proper words and language. This is when this brain ruled the body. And our latest brain is where the neocortex lives. It's called our human brain. This is where language is processed, and this is where kind of immediate decisions are made. Yes, no. Will I drive or will I get the bus? Am I staying for another pint or am I going home? I want jeans or I want cords. It's those kind of functional decisions operate in the neocortex. So the limbic brain is ultimately what content marketers need to appeal to, because that's where all the feels are, if you like. If you appeal to the limbic brain, you're going to generate a thing called oxytocin. And oxytocin allows us to feel empathy. So once you get that flowing, you've now made the connection. So there was a great study, there's a great TED talk by Yuri Hassan, who hooked people up to fMRIs. And fMRIs are, so the MRI is the thing you slide into and you get a big kind of picture of the brain. And fMRI gives you a heat map of your brain. So it tells you what part and when that part fires up in reaction to a stimulus. So Yuri Hassan did these tests where he had 5 people in a room, all hooked up to fMRIs. They were all kind of talking. Brains were firing at different points in different people at different times. And then he introduced a 6th person. So there was 5 people in the room. He introduced a 6th person, and the person walked in and started telling a story. And then what they noticed was literally everyone got on the same wavelength after a while. So the area of their brain and the time that it fired up, everyone was in perfect sync. And when they did a further analysis of this, it was down to basically the release of the oxytocin allows you to feel empathy. So it's as if the listener is going through exactly the same emotions as either the person in the story or the storyteller themselves. So this is the crux of it. This is the most important part of this talk, is you have to get your readers of your content or your consumers of your content to make that connection if you want to actually have an impact on their life, on their buying habits, on their whatever it is you're trying to do. That's what you need to get the oxytocin flowing. So just having words and the technical spec and then hoping that they get it or make the leap or the connection isn't going to be good enough. You need to actually tell them, right, here's the problem. You need to create a stressor. Oxytocin is released when people feel stress. You need to create a stressor in the story. So, you know, like the guy who sold me this laptop is saying, like, basically, if you buy an Apple, you're going to waste €2,000. Do you want to waste €2,000? No. You give me 1,000, put €2,000 in your back pocket, and I'll get you a great laptop. Like, that's the kind of, so I was kind of thinking, Jesus, yeah, I could save myself $2,000 here if I listen to this guy. I've done podcasts for B2B clients, and one of them was a 5-episode series on HR. And the most popular episode was how to deal with tricky staff. And if you just think about how stressful you might be if you're a HR professional, listen to that, or a small business owner, thinking about dealing with those tricky, and that's ultimately, I'm guessing, why that is the more popular episode, because the oxytocin was probably flowing. So very roundabout way, and I hope that answers the question, Mark, but I think you need to think on those levels, not on, okay, what are the 3 things I have to say about this product? It's not, it's how am I going to generate this feeling in the reader that's going to make them want to find out more about this product, or ultimately buy it, but find out more. So in a convoluted way, how do I create stress in someone's life so that they're going to listen to me more?
You can really see why video is so powerful now in that sense as well, just kind of to really engage someone in that way. They can, really visualize and get that feeling, I guess.
Put themselves in the person's
in the
shoes.
Position. Yeah. I think virtual reality will really take that concept that you're talking about to a very different level as well.
Yeah.
It certainly could. It certainly has the potential to. I mean, like if you think about a couple of years ago, video was going to take over the internet, and it kind of has. But that doesn't just mean video for video's sake. It has to still then, If you like, one of the best quotes you could summarize all of this is the Maya Angelou quote about you'll forget what people say, you'll forget where you met people, but you'll never forget how people made you feel. And so if you can do that through words, through audio, through video, it doesn't really matter. Just you have to make people feel something, and that's how they'll remember it. I've butchered that quote, but it's generally, people will remember how you feel, how you made them feel.
No, it is very, very true, and you can see it either in video or in written when you do. If you're reading that article, and if you're smiling or you're there's a tear coming down your eye or whatever, if it creates that kind of connection or emotion, you just have so much more of a connection to that, the writer, the content, the product, whatever it might be within it.
Yeah.
As you say, it makes the next step of either the purchase or the further research or whatever it might be so much more easier and more likely to happen as well.
Yeah, I saw Leia do a really good job of that recently. They did a video, I don't know, was it a series or just one or two I saw, but they did a huge amount of really personalized video content around women with postpartum depression and how their services help them with it. I've nearly bawling watching it. Like, it was just when companies manage to get that powerful emotion across, it really, really, really does impact on how people will interact with them.
Yeah, all this stuff that we're learning about the brain and neuroscience, this is only like 30 years old. And even if you think about things like behavioral economics, they're only 30, maybe 40 years old. Before that, we used to rely on an economic scenario. Like, it was kind of, there are a number of outcomes and it'll be one of those and you pick. And we typically went, oh, well, the best scenario is this one, so that's the one we're going to back. But it's such a fallacy because it assumes that the best scenario is always going to be the most popular one or the one that's going to actually turn out. And we know from economics that they can't forecast anything accurately in economics because there's always something different. So they go, oh, it was a black swan event. Like, there are always black swan events because there always will be black swan events because we can't predict everything. If it was just down to being the best, well, then Apple would have gone out of business years ago. And we've already extolled the virtues of that company, and they're unlikely to go out of the business. So it doesn't have to be about the best. It has, that's why we have jobs as marketers. If it was about the best, it'd be simple. Here's this product. It's much better than everyone else. Now go and buy it. But it's not, because we tell stories and we get people connected to their Apple devices like Jen, and they won't buy anything else then,
Stuck forevermore.
So Fergus, I suppose in terms of the actual structure then, we'll say, of creating content, the beginning, the middle and the end, we'll say, basically telling the story. Do you have any kind of suggestions there in terms of, is there kind of templates that people could follow in terms of setting a scene, how they could structure their content to be more emotive, I suppose?
Yep. So the number one thing you absolutely have to do if you want to get better as a content marketer is talk to your customers. Whether they have good things to say about you or bad, especially if they have bad things to say, because you're more likely to hear the bad things because that's somebody who's invested in your product and wants you to get better. We're not great at going back to people and telling them that was absolutely brilliant. Like, some of us will do it, most of us won't. We're not even that good at telling people what went wrong. But if somebody takes the time to tell you what went wrong, you have got someone who's really invested in your product or venue or whatever it was, and they want you to do better because they've just told you how to keep them as a lifelong customer, essentially. So before you put pen to paper, or even start thinking about ideas, go and talk to your customers. Prior to digital marketing, my previous life, I worked I worked with another large financial company when I was in Aviva, and they would actively ensure that none of the exercises we were ever involved in had to end up with them communicating with the customer. They just would not do it. And that's so, like, how are you going to sell more products to your target market if you're not asking them what they want, or what, like Jen said earlier, what are the problems in your life and how do we solve it? So some of the most powerful content you'll ever put on your website is a case study. And you can't do a case study without talking to your clients. And then from that, you're going to get ideas about, well, okay, that person mentioned this thing. If I could just do that a little better, or just do more of that, or just make that a bigger focus of the marketing. Now you're getting places, and it's informed by ultimately, like in Facebook marketing, you have this thing called lookalike audiences, which if you had an audience of your own customer, you can create a lookalike of those. So you're basically trying to find like-minded people who might also want to buy your product. Exact same with a case study and content marketing. Get a case study, and what you're going to do with that when you broadcast it is try to appeal to like-minded individuals. So like if your product has anyway got traction, someone has bought it, chances are there's someone like that person who also needs that problem solved, and now you have a chance to get them because you're going to talk to them in the same language as the customer who bought your product. So first and foremost, before you even put pen to paper or looking at it, you need to talk to your customers. If you don't have customers, if you're a startup, you need to talk to people who you're trying to reach, because they're the ones who are going to tell you if you're on the right track or not. More recently in Wolfgang, we were doing a project for a large retailer, and they came to us with a hypothesis. We want to reach these people because they are X, Y, and Z. And then we thought, okay, let's test that. Let's see if that is the actual case. And when we went to talk to these people, they weren't. It was a total distraction. What they had thought these people are was a total distraction. There was actually something else going on behind it. So 100% you have to talk to your customers or your target audience, the people you're trying to reach. Once you do that, then you need to set up your normal funnel, your awareness content, your interest, and your action content. Your action content is probably the easiest. Here you're going to lean on the features, because if they've got to the action bit, the conversion stage, they know about all the good stuff earlier on in the funnel. So now you can hit them with the features and tell them why, because it's this or it's that, or it's better, or it's cheaper, or it's faster, or it's going to do the thing that you want it to do. In the awareness, you're obviously talking about the problem, as Jen was talking about earlier on. So people know they have a problem, but they might not be aware of what the solution is. So you talk about the problem. 5 reasons why this thing is a pain in the ass. 5 reasons how your life would be better if you didn't have to deal with X. Address the issues that you're solving. Maybe drop yourself in at the end as to being a potential solution. Link to the next level of content, which is your interest stuff. 3 reasons why this product is the best for solving this problem. 5 reasons why, that kind of stuff. Get into the problem now and place yourself as not the hero, but if you like, you're going to be the Force to Luke Skywalker being the hero in the Star Wars movie. So you're the Force and Luke Skywalker is the customer. You want to empower him to be able to go off and save the day. Which brings me, so that's the funnel. You need to have your funnel mapped out. And if you're then struggling to actually write something that you feel is going to be emotive, this is maybe what you were hinting at towards, Mark, is the Pixar model, the beginning, middle, and end, and just how they set up all their films and their stories. So their beginning is once upon a time, set the scene, this happens every day, these people do these type of things, and life is fine. And then one day, something awful happens. There's a tipping point, there's a problem, there's a virus in the computer, whatever it is, there's a problem, and now life is all up in a tizzy. The middle bit then is, now you're into your interest level, if you like. Because of that, all this bad stuff happens. Because of that, we couldn't do this. Because of that, we couldn't reach these people. And then at the end, you're swooping in to save the day until one day, insert solution here, and life was just fantastic after that, and everyone lived happily ever after. So your beginning is, this is what life is like, and then a problem occurred. Your middle is, and because of that problem, all of this bad stuff happened. And at the end, then you're like, and then the solution came along, and now we're able to do all this fantastic stuff. And like I won't claim I've seen any or all of the Pixar movies. I couldn't even tell you which Pixar movies they've made. But this apparently is the formula they use for the storytelling, and so that's been incredibly effective for them. And I don't see why it wouldn't be for marketers as well.
100%.
Yeah.
You could. I mean, my God, their movies talk about creating emotion.
I know.
Watching Toy Story. Just even thinking about my heart is breaking.
But even that, it's like it's not getting old. Like Toy Story 4, I was straight to the cinema like I was 7 years old. You know what I mean? I was just it's the same concept on repeat, but I'm still like, wow.
Yeah. And wasn't the first Toy Story in like 1995 or 96 or something like that?
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like, it doesn't. the story ages fantastically. Maybe the graphics or the animation has come a long way, but and it's the same with video and with content, as you say. It's the story, it's the emotion that's going to grab people and kind of can last forever, I guess.
Yeah.
So Fergus, I suppose just to kind of wrap up, if somebody's more interested in getting deeper into this side of things, is there any particular books or blogs or podcasts you think that they'd like to listen to or read?
Yeah, well, I'll share kind of my journey through this subject. As I said at the start, it definitely did start with the Simon Sinek TED Talk. I saw that around 2011ish, 2012, and I did dismiss it. It's just marketing mumbo jumbo. But it's, if you haven't seen it, it's phenomenal. Have you guys seen it by any chance?
I have, yeah, it's very good. There's a few TED Talks now around marketing that I'd have bookmarked, all right, and just I need to go back to them again and just kind of jot down notes with them. Do you know, that kind of way? Yeah. But
I haven't seen that one. One that always jumped out with me, I don't know if you know Dan Ariely. He did Predictably Irrational.
Oh yes. That's very good as well. Yeah.
That's always one that jumps out at me as well.
Yeah.
There's so many good ones. This was my one, if you like. That was my kind of realization that there's something more to this. I didn't actually read his book then until about 2017, or one of his books. Start with the Why came out in about 2017, and it's essentially like, if you didn't want to read the book, the TED Talk is essentially Start with the Why, but it's brilliant. Another good one I read, actually before I saw that video but didn't connect it to this topic, was Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. That's a fantastic insight into success and the idea that some people are born with greatness, and how that's such a myth. That really breaks that down. And then there's a couple of books that deal with the how to get better, I suppose. So The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg is phenomenal read. This is a book that I think I will be reading for the rest of my life. I've only read it the once, and the guy who put me onto it was saying, wait till you read this, it's going to change your life. It hasn't yet, but I'm pretty sure it will. I am going to reread that again and take notes and actually try and do the stuff that's recommended in it. And two great books then that are more just sort of background information on how the brain works are Incognito, The Secret Lives of Your Brain by David Eagleman. That is fascinating. And The Talent Code by Dan Coyle, which both of those books absolutely dispel the myth that some people are better than others because they're born with certain stuff. Like in Incognito, there's a section where they go into the debate about nature versus nurture. So, so if you're a good kid but you're in a bad neighborhood, is it more likely that you're going to turn into a bad kid because of the environment? And there's actually a biological reason why you won't. It's not part of your DNA, but it's a protein called the long allele. And if you have this long allele, you're less susceptible to your environment. So for example, I don't know if this is true, but I'm guessing LeBron James probably has long alleles because his home life, if you like, was horrific, but yet became the biggest, probably most successful, probably best basketball player ever. Now, there's obviously a few other things going for him, not just the long allele, but let's say if he had become more susceptible to his environment, he might not have made it out and he might not have ever picked up a basketball. So it gets into that kind of thing, really dispels all the myths you had about, you'll never be as good as that guy because that guy was born with greatness. That's absolute.
I don't want to curse, but it's, you know what I'm trying to say.
Apple doesn't like that.
Yeah. So there are two good ones on just the kind of the background, the understanding, Incognito and The Talent Code. There's another book that I've picked up twice and just haven't been able to get through it because it's really heavy going. But in all of these other books it's mentioned, and that's Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow by Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. I think this is the book if you're into this stuff. It is the definitive guide maybe, and has all the best studies and research. I just find it so heavy going. I've picked it up twice. I've got nearly halfway through both times and I've just walked away from it. I will finish it at some point, but that's another one if people are really looking for a deep dive into the topic.
Yeah. Look like my Amazon shopping list will get a little longer today.
Fergus, that's fantastic. Yeah. If people want to find out more about yourself or what you do, is there a place particular they can go to have a look?
Yeah, I'm probably on Twitter most, just looking around at the Brexit and Trump related news for entertainment for the lols. So at Gus Ryan 100 on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn probably next, or that's probably my next favorite topic. Just Fergus Ryan or Gus Ryan 100 if you search for that profile. Yeah, send me a message or drop us a tweet. Yeah,
Brilliant. Gus Ryan, thank you very much.
Thanks a million.
Thanks a million, Mark, Jen. Brilliant.